Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Lisa, open up, please. An insistent knock on the door, and a woman's voice made the girl take off her headphones. What do you want to know? I'm busy. Lisa replied irritably. This definitely deserves your attention. Come here, rolling your eyes. Lisa slammed the lid of the laptop and advanced to the edge of the bed, putting on her slippers. The girl walked to the door and turned the lock. Long blonde hair rolled down behind her back, green eyes. Lisa was wearing home shorts and a shirt, clearly hinting that she wasn't planning on socializing with anyone right now. Behind the door was stepmother model Kelly, dressed in her wife's perfectly made-up white suit and sandals. The woman was studying confidence with all her looks. Kelly's gaze was focused on the shard she was stubbornly scrutinizing. For a few seconds now. So what happened? See, Kelly carried the shard toward the girl's face. It doesn't look like anything. Lisa carefully took the shard from the woman's hands. Apparently, this piece of porcelain had once been part of an entire composition. On it sat a bouquet. The cornflowers are broken off at this point. It's your figurine. Where did you find this shard? Near your room. It was lying by the door. Lisa immediately realized what her stepmother was getting at. The thing is, someone had broken Kelly's porcelain figurine this morning. And the problem wasn't the price or the skillful handiwork. It was a gift from my father on Kelly's first anniversary. A reminder, in this woman's mind, of how lucky she is to be married. Kelly, I told you this morning that I didn't touch your figure. I have no idea where it's gone or why there's a shard of it by the door to my room. That's right, the shard my stepmother snatched the china out of Lisa's hands. Not only is my prized figurine missing, but it's also shattered. The woman's breathing became ragged. Kelly took off the sunglasses she had come back from the street with and saw that her stepmother's eyes were already wet. How naive, thought the girl. Shook her head. Kelly, I'm really sorry about what happened with those words. Lisa wanted to pat her stepmother on the shoulder, but she only took a step back. Lisa, what was all this talk for? All these promises, trying to find common ground. I'm doing my best to make him happy too. What about you? Dad's having a hard time with his business, and he can't even ask his family for support. The woman's words hurt Lisa. Kelly tried to shift to the girl. All the responsibility for the unsuccessful communication between stepdaughter and stepmother, although she herself was far from ideal. And then she brought her father here, as if he even cared about the family. The sobs were getting worse. Lisa, not wanting to watch the concert, tried to close the door. But the stepmother managed to grab the handle. We have an important dinner tonight, Lisa. Charles stammered for a second, thinking it was worth adding in words of officiousness. Charles wanted you to be there. Why would I want to go to dinner? We can at least eat without the lecture. The lectures will be afterwards, you understand. Charles, there's someone I'd like you to meet, but... Kelly couldn't take it anymore and kicked my foot. The sound rippled through the huge house, echoing through the first floor. I hope you don't want Charles to know about your prank. Or do you want to disappoint him even more? Lisa gripped the doorknob with renewed vigor. She didn't care about another fight with her father, but she didn't want to draw attention from him. Father and daughter had long ago lived in different worlds. The father cared only about Lisa's educational practice. Or maybe that was the only reason to talk about it. In any case, the girl wanted to continue to be free from her father's influence. Therefore, instead of affectionate words, Kelly only nodded irritably to her stepmother. Such an answer was quite satisfactory, so the woman let go of the doorknob. Lisa slammed the door. The main thing is you're not going to disappoint him tonight. The stepdaughter gritted her teeth. She spent the rest of the day on her phone. The study practice, which should have been started a long time ago, had been successfully ignored. The violin teacher at UCLA had rescheduled the class for another week, and a couple of times she'd gone down to get food or talk to the housekeeper, though she couldn't call her that. Good-natured Betty was the only person who really cared about her stepdaughter and genuinely sympathized with her after her mother's death. Lisa remembered Betty from birth, when the housekeeper's face had not yet had a single wrinkle on it. Even though Betty was already in her 40s then, No man would have dared to give a woman that old and intellectual in a leather governess suit of bunched black hair. That's the way Betty had always been. Once, after another argument between Lisa and Kelly, Betty had even secretly ruined her stepmother's jacket. Oh, Kelly's glasses don't take care of the customers nowadays. The governess explained that day with an impeccable smile as she handed over the torn jacket. 3 quick knocks on the door were heard. The crisp sound with perfect pauses made Lisa smile. Their little greeting with Betty had become so familiar, even though no one had agreed on it beforehand. Running Betty. Lisa quickly pulled on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt for the rules. At the sight of the girl, the housekeeper grimaced, but after a second a smile appeared on her face. Lisa, dinner will be here any minute, so your father is asking you to come. Betty always spoke to their family members Nayu, observing the etiquette, look fresh, but perhaps not for the business dinner business. Lisa clarified with surprise. Weren't you told? An influential businessman and future partner of Charles was coming to dinner. Betty leaned closer and whispered conspiratorially, "It seems he's arriving with a son your age." Lisa wrinkled her nose at the thought of what Dad might be up to. It made her uncomfortable. "So okay, don't scare me before my time. Better tell me what to wear." Lisa gestured for the housekeeper to look through her closet. Betty decided not to cross the threshold, but only peered carefully inside the room. "As I recall, Lisa, you have a floor-length red evening dress. I think it would look great with the black buckled shoes and gold chain your father gave you for your 18th birthday." Sitting down on the bed and rummaging through her hair and her underwear, Lisa gave out, "Betty, are you trying to sell me? For a day on the chain. Kelly was the one who said it was just dinner. What's the big deal? What's so complicated?" Lisa, "So that Charles can feel free to talk to his partner about buying a piece of land, not, as Kelly would say, you stunt, and you're not without regrets," Lisa said in words. The governess exhaled, still entered the room and sat down gently on the edge of the bed, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. The woman said, "No, Lisa, you are mistaken. I only wish that this meeting would not bring you negative emotions." Lisa wanted so badly to snuggle up to Betty, as she had sometimes done as a child. But her father did not encourage such communication, giving the care of the girl to a nanny, a teacher, a psychologist. And so, in her 20s, Lisa still couldn't break down that barrier. "Okay, I'll be there in a couple minutes, you can go smugly." Smiling, the housekeeper moved towards the door, reaching for the knob. The woman suddenly heard a timid, "Thank you," and with a confident nod, closed the door. Lisa did exactly as Betty had suggested. The light makeup gave the girl confidence, and having gathered her strength, she went to the first floor. As she approached the stairs, the girl looked around the lobby from the first floor. She was stared at by 2 lions sitting opposite the main door. They had been installed last year at Kelly's request. "I wish someone would steal them already." The girl walked down the stairs, then headed toward the archway where the men's voices were coming from. As she approached the living room, the girl caught Kelly's chatter and involuntarily cringed. But the squeamishness was abruptly replaced by concern. When was Lisa able to see the participants in this conversation? "Oh no," the girl whispered, covering her lips with the palm of her hand. At the long table sat Kelly's dad and business partner and his apparently son. That would be all right, but the son was James, who lived by the principle of not denying himself anything. Lisa knew him from the English classes they'd taken together in their last years of high school. Tall, neat, with a great sense of humor. James from childhood was accustomed not only to barbershop and premium clothes, but also demanded from the guy success in studies, sports, socializing. Then this charming guy rounded the girl's head. And when he casually offered Lisa to drive to the mansion in his car, she happily agreed. Except that there was no personal driver in the car. The guy, feeling permissive in a locked car, began to molest the model. Then the girl miraculously managed to open the door, spilling coffee on the touchpad. Immersed in her stepdaughter's musings, watched the conversation from behind the archway, slightly poking her head out. She could hear scraps of phrases. Apparently, the discussion was about James and his unprecedented accomplishments in school, sports, and even Daddy's business. "You're a success." But Lisa didn't manage to finish the phrase. Suddenly, Lisa's voice sounded behind the girl's back. From surprise, Lisa had not worn high-heeled shoes for a long time when she fell at the feet of the participants of the feast. First, Kelly's awe was heard, then a laugh. The stepdaughter felt her cheeks flush with a blush, which only the youngest and most intemperate of those present could emit. To the rescue as Betty rushed over, the culprit awkwardly. The appearance of the girl, "I beg your pardon, Lisa," whispered. She lifted the girl by the arm. Lisa nodded, getting angry at Betty did not even occur to her. After all the good deeds of the housekeeper, the governess looked around at those present. "I take it that of the gentlemen here in the room, I'm the only one," the woman said, keeping her face stern. Charles was now sitting red-faced. Lisa's mind flashed back to the phrase, spoken in her father's stern voice. "Betty. Well, of course there it is." With these words, James carefully stepped out from behind the desk and sitting down on one knee gave the girl his hand. Charles instinctively rose as well, but Kelly put her hand on his and gave him a meaningful look as she stood next to the governess. The boy lowered his voice and almost hissed. "Though I thought it was nothing for a housekeeper to lift something heavy." His face didn't change a bit. Betty looked down at the guy. Lisa's eyes were full of rage. If they knew how to send sparks, they would definitely come through. "Velvet jacket, James, is all right." "Betty, thank you." Betty checked to see if the guests had enough servings and removed herself from the table, squeamishly placing her hand in James's palm. Lisa grimaced, but the girl had to put on a Hollywood smile. After all, she didn't want to draw any more attention to herself. After walking Lisa to the table, the guy helped her to sit down and returned to his seat across the table. At the table, what had happened was successfully ignored, and the conversation started again. "Lisa, this dress suits you very well." Kelly winked at the girl. "I can't help but join in the compliment. Since our last meeting, your beauty has unfolded like the first spring snowdrops, Lisa." With those words, James leaned back in his chair as if to continue. "But the most important snowdrop of all." This is where I nervously renamed the chain. The hotel thanked the attendees for their compliments. Having exchanged courtesies, the participants of the feast returned to the first conversation. Those present were actively discussing auctions, development options, and expected profits. Even Kelly, clearly not versed in the topic, managed to insert her 0.05 R into the conversation. Lisa quickly lost interest in what was going on, excluding the subtle odor of the dish. "Is it much stronger in Manila?" Soon the clinking of instruments was heard. Occasionally glancing at those present, Lisa noticed more and more often the gaze of the young major. Once it even seemed to her that the boy winked at her, or was her imagination running wild on the background of the fall? "Lisa, are you also studying remotely?" Robert, the stepdaughter, was approached by her father's business partner. No sooner had Lisa finished her vegetables than Kelly did. "Lisa has finished her law degree and will soon be practicing in Charles' department." Kelly casually tapped her husband on the shoulder and continued, "Last year, we made an arrangement with a famous violinist from overseas. He teaches Lisa remotely, but sometimes he comes and gives precise lessons." "Oh, how's that?" "That's great. James likes to play the violin too." "Come you, James?" The guy nodded approvingly. "Yes, I've been playing violin since high school. I remember when I didn't even have time to eat after English class. The driver was already waiting to take me to my tutor." Lisa choked up at the mention of English class. The guests, apparently already accustomed to the girl's indiscretion, did not pay attention to it. "What a great spotlight, this is Kelly. And could you give Lisa some advice?" While the men are discussing the development of the next plot of land, winked Kelly to her husband. "Kelly, why would you do that? He's already a man too." Lisa thought to herself and smiled genuinely for the first time. Apparently, James took the smile as a call to action and started to get up from the table. "I'll be glad to get my mind off my father's ideas, which he's actively dragging me into," the boy sarcastically remarked. Realizing that she had been played for a fool, Lisa stared at Kelly with a pleading look in her eyes. The stepmother didn't look away. Her eyes darted toward the stairs. And at the same second, the stepdaughter realized that no one was going to save her. The evening was getting worse and worse for the girl. James went upstairs. The boy let the girl pass in front. As they walked up the stairs, the only thing that bothered Lisa at that moment was the direction of James's eyes, for the girl was afraid of being on the floor again. But this time there was no awkwardness. "It's very beautiful here," James concluded enthusiastically, looking around the hall. "Yes, it's all Kelly's doing. She has taste," the boy said. "And even these lions don't embarrass you." Lisa smirked and pointed her finger at the main door. James looked out from behind the mischievous Joy on the first floor. "Well, these lions are definitely not in the taste department," he said with a smile. Lisa watched the guy as she tried to open the door to the warehouse. No matter how much Kelly praised her, the girl hadn't touched a violin in 6 months. This state of affairs suited both the California tutor and her teacher getting paid separately and disturbingly. Kelly tried to teach her stepdaughter all the talents of the world, so skillfully made violin also skillfully dusted in the warehouse. Among the girl's other hobbies somehow gave in. The door creaked open. "Hold on a second. I'll get the violin." With these words, Lisa ducked into the warehouse, trying not to hit the statues of various items frozen in it. James, ignoring the request, followed the girl. Knocking down a couple of books, the boy slammed the door shut. Lisa's heart twinged when, turning around, she saw James. The atmosphere was reminiscent of that awful car, just as cramped and hot. Remembering that the girl was still on her own turf, Lisa reached for her violin. Suddenly, James intercepted her hand and turned her toward him. Lisa almost expelled, but managed to keep her composure by removing her gentleman's mask. The guy hissed angrily, "Listen here. I don't care what he wants this time or why he made you come to your fucking dinner. But rest assured, no matter how many delusional ideas Daddy comes up with, as long as he gives me money, I'll do whatever he wants." The grip loosened a little, and Lisa was able to pull her hand out. The pounding of her heart echoed in her ears. Her breath cleared. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, taking a step back. "I don't know yet. But I want to warn you, if I need something from you, I'll ask you differently." With those words, the guy leaned in toward the girl Nick. Then in the intimidation machine James worked, but not at all as he expected. Lisa, who had been shaking with fear until that second, suddenly felt anger. How many times had she had to be a puppet in the hands of other people? How many years had she lived under the oppression of family members? The hated profession of a capricious stepmother. That damn violin, everything was against her. And even now, some guy born with a golden spoon in his mouth was trying to lift the girl under him. The accumulated anger was becoming impossible to contain. When James tried to pat the girl's cheek, Lisa, resting against the shelf for protection, suddenly touched the strings. "Fuck you," she said, and at the same second, she hit the guy with the violin. From the surprise, James couldn't keep his balance and started to fall. On his way, with the mushrooms on himself, a good half of the warehouse, Lisa continued to club the guy with the violin, shouting, "This is for you for the car. This is for your daddy's ideas, and this is just for fun." The loud noises in the warehouse certainly got the attention of all the guests, and within seconds, the room was filled with light. Lisa's father appeared on the doorstep first, followed by Robert. The last to arrive was Kelly, seeing James lying on the floor and Lisa lying on top of him with her violin. The woman shrieked and ran after Betty. "What's going on here?" Robert asked angrily, helping James up. "That crazy woman started beating me with the violin when I wanted to show her the sheet music." But James was making up non-existent arguments as he went along. The truth is, in an act of surprise, Lisa wailed, "Don't you want to tell me about the threats?" Robert's face was angry with paint, but far from embarrassment at his son's behavior. It seemed that he would not be able to restrain himself and would hit the girl in another second. All this time, Lisa looked at her father. The same thought was running through her head. "Will you marry me, Dad? This is some kind of misunderstanding. Let's go downstairs and talk." In vain, Charles tried to defuse the situation. A misunderstanding. The business partner shouted angrily, "Your daughter is one big misunderstanding. Can you forget about the contract?" With these words, the man and his son headed for the main exit. Lissa's legs gave out. Only thanks to the closet, the girl was able to keep from falling. "What's the contract, Dad?" she whispered, feeling tears coming up. But instead of a clear explanation, Lisa's father grabbed his head and started to tell her off. "Are you out of your mind, Lisa? You just beat up a man. Dad broke an expensive violin. Now you won't even get a contract. Do you realize how much $1 billion the company will lose?" The nerves were starting to make me nauseous. But the girl managed to gather the last of her strength into a fist. "Daddy, he threatened me. He threatened me. He said I had to do whatever he said." Charles looked at his daughter carefully. "He really said so, yes. Daddy, yes," not believing his success, and choking back tears, Odell for nodding. "And if I don't agree, then what?" Father asked sternly. "He'll make me do whatever he wants me to do." "Now you understand." Charles rubbed his forehead irritably. For a few seconds, the man was silent, listening to his daughter Vanya's sobs. The silence was interrupted by Lisa. "Daddy, say something." With these words, the girl reached out to her father, but she was met by two dry palms. A distance was established between father and daughter. After a couple of seconds, a detached voice sounded. "You need to reflect on your behavior, Lisa. There are too many lies in your words. But before, they were just words. Now you've decided to move on to actions." A figure of speech. Lisa couldn't get a word in edgewise. The humiliated, lonely girl froze like that, holding out her hands to her father. She could have tried to justify herself, to make amends, to apologize. But she realized it wouldn't make any difference. "I'm disappointed in you, Lisa." The words sounded like a sentence. All that was missing was a hammer. After the blow, with which the father, as if a real judge removed from the courtroom, Charles silently went down to the first floor and left the house. Shocked, Lisa stood across the street, uncovered in the warehouse. And not even the familiar clatter of shoes could bring the girl to her senses. "Lisa, Lisa, Lisa." Betty couldn't stop saying the girl's name, stroking her arm. For a split second, Lisa's legs gave out, and tears brimmed her eyes. Unable to contain her emotions, the girl fell to her knees. Betty sank down with her, continuing to stroke the model's arm. Disregarding etiquette, the girl hugged the housekeeper, choking back tears from the unexpected embrace. The governess's hands froze in midair. When the girl's hysteria subsided a little, Betty pulled away and looked into her eyes. "And I have a confession to make to you." Trying to wipe away her stepdaughter's tears, the governess asked what was the matter. Nervously adjusting her dress and exhaling, she spoke. "The thing is, I'm the one who broke Kelly's porcelain figurine." Lisa stopped sobbing. She looked up, reddened and eyes on the woman. "What is it?" "I broke the figurine. When you were cleaning your stepmother's room." Betty became nervous. "I sometimes get cramps that I can't control because of my age. My hand shook, and I dusted the Kelly figurine, and when I was carrying the shards, I dropped one near your room. But why didn't I tell Kelly about it? I could have been fired from modeling." Lisa let out a nervous laugh. "You're always defending me, and you still haven't gotten fired." "What changed?" "Changed with sadness in her eyes," said Betty. "I don't want to bring it all down to you, Lisa. Sometimes my behavior is inappropriately impertinent, but often out of a desire to help you, as you say, to protect you. Tell them I didn't break the figurine," Lisa said with a pleading look in her eyes. "I'm afraid they won't believe me." Lisa rose with a jolt from her dress. Dust. The girl silently headed for her room. She didn't have the energy to argue. All she wanted to do was leave. Next, she woke up early. The girl was almost awake, pondering what she should do next. Lisa felt deprived of support, so she decided to look for it elsewhere. Gathering all the essentials in her backpack, the girl tiptoed down to the first floor. She left a note next to Betty's room about where she was going, closing the door. Next, she looked around the room once more. She wasn't leaving for long. but the pinching feeling in her chest, as if it was telling, with this place you'll see things for a while yet. Before leaving, the girl decided to wear her mom's pendant, a small heart with a compartment for a photo, inside which was kept the most valuable photo of her mother. The girl passed the security guards quietly. No one thought to stop the grown daughter of a millionaire who could go anywhere and return the same way. And Daddy taught them not to ask unnecessary questions, thought the model, deciding not to use the services of a driver's stepdaughter. On foot, swore to the nearest stop in the neighborhood in which Smith lived. Such a one was an hour's walk away. Do rich people take buses? Did the developers think they were doing a neighborhood plan? Turns out they take one bus, then another, then the subway, then the train, and then the bus again. Lisa was thinking, wiggling her feet at the bus stop. By lunchtime, the girl was already approaching the village of Chernigov and met with rain. Lisa liked the trip though, except for that guy on the bus who took her in the seat. And he was famished. The girl was in a great hurry to her grandmother, counting every house that met her on the way. 11, 12. A boy on a bicycle rushed past. Lisa. When he heard Lisa scream, he turned around, but instead of apologizing, he showed his tongue to the girl and pedaled even faster. "You rude little rascal." The stepdaughter shouted after the boy, but the resentment was gone when the girl's stomach made a sound. Lisa hurried to her grandmother. Cindy was in the kitchen at that time. The old lady had already spotted the dough for the pies and was now watching the local kids through the window. Suddenly, there was an insistent knock on the door. From surprise, there was a shudder. Cindy hurried to the guest. Over the crack, grandmother opened the door as far as the chain allowed. There was no one in the opening. "Strange," whispered Granny. But suddenly there was a bang, and from around the corner Cindy jumped out, her granddaughter aghast. The old woman instinctively pulled the door on herself, but after a second she laughed. "And girl, are you crazy to scare an old man? But look how cleverly you closed the door with trembling hands." Grandma took off the chain from the shelf, and in the same second, sank into the arms of her granddaughter. The warmth of the moment was interrupted by a sound coming from Lisa's belly. "What am I, Lord?" "Cindy, let's go to the table. I'm going to fry the pies now. I'm going to go wise for now." With those words, Lisa put her backpack next to the door and headed towards the garden. Behind the house, everything looked the same, and the nearest fence, painted water barrels, and endless water beds. It seemed to Lisa that her grandmother had planted even more plants this year. The girl was always amazed at how a 65-year-old woman managed to take care of a huge vegetable garden. The wind felt good. It almost hung the skin, sitting here next to Ramon's house. The girl felt a lump coming up to her throat. Bees circled over, planted in a row with dahlias barrels of water, flew sparrow and leaned over. Started to wash his feathers, looking at the bird. The girl began to calm down for some reason. She liked to watch everything that happened in the village. It was so peaceful and easy, so at home. "Lisa, well, you're lost in there somewhere." I heard the granny's disgruntled voice. Running quickly, waving away the tears, the stepdaughter ran into the house. In the kitchen, a table of food was already waiting for the girl. Cindy, as if she was welcoming a delegation of Chinese, not a fragile granddaughter. Here and kissel and jam and a kroshki, and pancakes with different fillings. "Now, granddaughter, wait a second. I'll fry a couple of pies with jam and we'll eat." Lisa nodded. Cindy dipped the remaining patties into the hot oil and sat down opposite her granddaughter. For a couple of seconds, Lisa and Grandma just looked at each other. The first silence was broken by the old lady. "How are you doing? How is your grandmother running around, remembering the words?" "Well, these sawmills can programs." Smiling, the granddaughter clarified. "Oh, you're right, programs." "Yeah, it's okay, Grandma. I've already finished the course. Now I found a team on the internet. I'm writing code for them." "What's the code about?" "I hope I guessed right," Cindy asked. "It's code for a computer game, roughly speaking. I make objects in virtual space move." With these words, Lisa took a pancake out of the cup and made a wave with it. "And still I'm far from it, Lisa. Oh, come on. I'm still just starting to eat the pancake myself, Lisa said. Grandma got up to flip the pies. The granddaughter smelled the aroma of strawberries. Apparently, there was a hole in the dough from which the jelly had leaked out. Inhaling the wonderful smell, Lisa found it harder and harder to restrain herself from the desire to cram everything from this table into herself. Watching the old woman, it seemed to the girl that Cindy was even more offended. The granddaughter had been visiting her grandmother 6 months ago, so she had noticed the change. But it wasn't just Cindy's back problems that hurt the girl's heart. While they were talking, Lisa noticed several deep wrinkles, which had seemed so small and unpleasant to realize that the years were inexorably taking their toll. Would it really end like this? This place is this house garden, the girl thought. Putting a plate with freshly spoiled cakes on the table, the grandmother began to pour tea. Lisa jumped up, wanting to help with the kettle, but Granny refused the offer. Soon the women were down to lunch, though it was already midday, chucking in a new and different pie. The girl did not understand whether she was hungry for this trip, or whether the grandmother was a real sorceress. How long have you come for? Decided to clarify the old woman. To know at once by what date to make some presents for my granddaughter. Lisa looked thoughtfully away. She didn't know how long she had come for. I don't know yet, Grandma, answered the girl of milk and a pie in sour cream. For 2 weeks, probably. Grandma clearly didn't expect the girl to be here for a long time. Usually Lisa left her mother's house with a bunch of bags, with clear contents. Already, 2-3 days later, she has a pile of things to do. Cindy not even dare to interfere with the grandmother persuaded herself, escorting Lisa to the bus stop for 2 whole weeks. And this will not interfere with her studies. And as if by accident, Grandma said, "It won't interfere with your studies. I have long since closed all the debts, and now I can finally focus on myself." Pondering the utterance, the girl felt great self-pity, which did not escape the eyes of Lisa's grandmother. Something happened restlessly, the old lady clarified. The girl nodded, afraid that if she started talking, she would flood the whole table with tears. Cindy hugged Lisa's palm with both hands. Get ready to listen. The grandmother was not mistaken. And already in a second, the granddaughter quietly sobbed and told about the pressing issue. The girl spoke of her stepmother's gullibility, of Betty's betrayal of her father's deed. At one point, Cindy clutched at her heart. The gesture brought Lisa back to reality as if under a spell. Grandma's okay. Lisa ran to the closet, frantically searched the shelves. The girl tried to find at least some medicine, even though she herself did not fully understand what kind of Lisa's face. I'm all right. Sit down, dear, the grandmother said, tugging her granddaughter's arm. With trembling lips, Lisa sat down in her seat. I'm sorry, she whispered, stroking her grandmother's hand. You have nothing to apologize for, my lily of the valley. She's old when she can't pull herself together. Here, spit invisible saliva, old lady. If I were younger, I'd give Charles and his girl a beating. Lisa smiled. She was grateful to Cindy that the old lady had sided with her right away. No questions asked, no clarification. Just believed her granddaughter. She said, I'm a Russian rotten man, and she's an educated, well-mannered guy. Look at his manners. We're fed up. My grandmother turned to the window. But he's still my daddy. Lisa laughed. You better tell me, how did he and Mom communicate? The old lady loved to talk about her mother. The image of a curly-haired, ladder-haired woman with fine, graceful features immediately popped into Cindy's head, remembering her daughter. It was as if Grandma was reliving those happy days when she was alive. How she loved that fool. But he tested her feelings to the last and did not say that he was swimming in money. There was a look of surprise on Lisa's face. Yes, granddaughter, when they met at the institute, your father was a fool. Vanessa, thanks to her knowledge, was able to get out of the village. Charles' parents paid his tuition, while his daughter was trying to fill his head with something other than endless spending. She fell in love, and I didn't even know it. You told me so much about Mom, but almost never about her relationship with Dad. Cindy made a stern face. I'm sorry, Lisa, but I don't like Charles. He wouldn't let Vanessa out of his sight when they started hanging out. And what does he do to you? His only daughter? Well, I wish. It's good. Not wanting to upset my grandmother, I decided not to ask any more questions about Mom and Dad's relationship. Better tell me how Mom got all blotchy the day of the exam. Oh, I smiled happily at Cindy. Grandma and her granddaughter spent the rest of the afternoon talking. They talked about Cindy's youth, about Grandpa, about Mom. A couple times Lisa went up to warm the tea or kill the clappers. Sometimes I'd fly him, and I didn't notice the whole day had flown by. Remembering that she was off the road after all, Cindy forced Lisa to take a shower before bed. Lisa quickly hung up the clothes she had brought from the mansion. When the granddaughter arrived, she always made herself comfortable in her grandfather's room. The summer shower, built by her grandfather, was behind the garden. In addition to the curtain and fence from prying eyes, it was hidden by a crumbling apple tree, which became a building with its branches. Lisa swung into the shower in a single towel and closed the door a crack. The water was cool. It seemed to chill not only her skin, but her mind as well. The drops running from the rusty watering can grew warmer with each passing second. I wished I could stand like this forever, the drops falling and falling on my face, washing away all the remnants of tears, like it was a lifetime ago. But it was beginning to get dark, and the girl had to finish. Turn off into the water. Lisa, with her eyes closed, tried to fumble for towels. The soapy water was starting to sting her face unpleasantly. The girl opened her eyes and was horrified to find the towels left on the fence, missing. Without time to contemplate, now how to get on the shower route home through a couple of 3 windows of neighbors and boys. Such was the sight, Lisa heard a chuckle. The girl turned around and saw the towel in the very spot where she had left it before taking a shower. Perplexed, she reached for her only chance to get home. Once dressed, Lisa was surprised to find that the towel had shifted to the side. Taking a step, the girl pulled her hand toward the cloth, which immediately shifted before her eyes. A childish laugh was heard again, and abruptly she grabbed the cloth and pulled on it as hard as she could, meeting resistance. On the other hand, the stepdaughter yanked the towel violently towards herself. That hurt. I heard a disgruntled boy's voice. "You're out of your mind." Lisa weighed in. Punching the fence with my fist, I might have gotten off my ass. "Did you put a splinter in my finger?" said the boy, offensively. After a couple of minutes, Christopher felt his strength waning. The cleaning work he had spent the whole day on had not gone to waste. A great idea popped into the boy's head. What if we turn into the woods there? She will definitely not run. Thought he begins to slow down before the turn, deciding that Christopher gives up sweating. Lisa was already starting to get excited about winning. Suddenly, the guy turned onto an obscure path and started to pick up speed again. "Now you'll come back and get it," thought Lisa, dodging along the path. The chase continued. Christopher, however, reduced his speed so as not to fall on any bump. "What do you want from me?" "Leave me alone," sighed the boy, who was tired of piddling. But there was no answer. Tired Lisa couldn't drop a word. Her legs ached from running, and her shirt was wringing. With each step, the chase became more difficult. Gradually, the thirst for adrenaline that was driving Lisa began to torment her. The first kilometer had exhausted its possibilities. "Stop, Christopher. Wait for me," but the boy didn't hear. Lisa stopped, trying to catch her breath. "Wait, Christopher." Gasping, the girl repeated. Christopher turned into a forest clearing. Soon the boy's silhouette disappeared from sight. Lisa, frustrated by another attempt, crouched down on the road, picking up the book, which now had a fingerprint on it. The girl became even more frustrated. After resting for a couple minutes, Lisa got up with the firm belief that tomorrow she would make up with the boy's parents. Conversation. He who laughs last. She shouted in the direction where Christopher used to be. Lisa turned around and wandered back. It was starting to get dark, so the girl decided to speed up. Suddenly in front of the stepdaughter, and grew a fork in the direction of the forest or through the wheat fields. Where did I come from? Confusedly thought the girl. While Lisa was running, her gaze had been focused on the distant figure of the boy. Now she couldn't remember which way she should turn. The panic that entered her throat drowned out her thirst. Lissa's head turned toward one path and another, trying to determine which one was better trampled. The girl squatted down, but this information gave her nothing. Soon the anxiety burst out, and "Somebody help!" screamed the girl, feeling a tear covering her eyes. There was no answer. The phone, that's right. Lissa frantically searched her pockets, but there was no phone in them. Though it was unlikely, there was an available connection deep in the woods. "Well, of course I didn't take it," shouted the girl, changing the air. Dusk was beginning to roll around the wheat field. Next, she decided that she wasn't going to just stand there. The girl picked her way across the fields, hoping she could see something from behind the low ears. Switching to a quick step, Lissa hurried in an unknown direction, clutching the book to her chest. After a couple minutes, the gravel and rubble showed, and the road rejoiced. The girl switched to a light jog, but when she got closer, she realized that it was an ordinary forest tube, filled in and small stones. "Probably they rest here while working," thought the model as cheered the girl up a little. For now, she had hope that she would be found in the morning. She was hungry, but even more she was thirsty. Her throat was dry, and she was coughing. Soon it became completely dark, and the girl could no longer see Lissa's own hand. The darkness intensified her hearing. Lissa flinched at every rustle, every cry of a bird. Only the sound of wheat, ears swaying in the breeze, soothed the frightened stepdaughter. The girl was on the verge of hysterics, but it was as if the tears had exhausted their limit this week. "Aha!" Lissa shuddered and closed her eyes, even though it was already dark. "It's an owl, it's just an owl," tried to reassure herself. The girl Lissa decided to speak aloud to make it easier to wait out the night. And how was she giving this Major James? Another second, he'd start calling for help, screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, my girl's hitting me. Help me." And when his father came, he'd pounce, and I'd warm him up with my violin. Lissa laughed nervously. Talking aloud really did the girl good, as well as tiredness after the vegetable garden. Continuing to tell her invisible friend about past events. Lissa stuck close to the wheat. She was grateful for the solid ears. The cats had her from the wind, and the beasts the girl tried not to think about. Gradually, Lissa's trembling voice changed to a whisper and soon stopped altogether. The girl had fallen asleep. Lissa stood in front of the huge door. Its handles were so high that the girl had to jump up to reach at least one of them. "Come on, come on." Lissa tried to reach the other one. It took a couple more jumps before the handle gave way. Then there was a shrill creak as the door opened. Nothing could be seen behind the hulk, only darkness. Cautiously, taking a step, Lissa ducked inside. "Is there someone here?" asked the girl in the darkness. Something began to happen to the door. Lissa was terrified and bounced away from the hulk. Human eyes appeared at the door, their pupils running frantically around the corners of the invisible room. Noticing Lissa, they stopped. The stepdaughter began to take slow steps backward. 1 second as she suddenly stepped on a branch. A creak echoed through the room that went unnoticed by the doors. Just below her eyes, a fiery maw opened and gave an inhuman sound. Lissa screamed in terror and threw herself into the darkness. With every second, it was getting closer to the jaws. I felt a touch. Someone's hands lifted the girl and swiftly carried her away. The invisible savior ran much faster than the girl. With each second, the monster became smaller and smaller, but continued to make horrifying sounds. Voices were heard. Lissa opened her eyes and did not immediately realize what was happening. She was in the hands of some guy who was running through a cynical field, not paying attention to the crumpled ears. Lissa in his hands was like a stew. The girl already wanted to scream, but when she turned her head, she was at a loss for words. Lissa saw a horrifying picture. A huge tractor with long metal villas and flying everything in its path was bearing down on them. "Scream, Lissa, scream." Turned to the girl. The guy was carrying her in his arms and knocking her breath away. He couldn't speak properly, but he was still trying to get through to the frightened girl. The guys were a couple of meters away. The driver, as if nothing had happened, was pointing the car straight at the girl and the guy. And even shouting wouldn't stop him. The chanson coming from the speakers drowned out everything around them. Lissa jabbed at the guy's chest, unable to utter a single word. The girl did not know what would happen next and whether they could survive. But in these arms, in these embrace, she felt safe. Suddenly, the noise coming from the metal structures stopped. Lissa could only hear the engine of the tractor. Eyes can be opened, a gasping voice said. She opened her eyelashes. The first thing the girl saw was wheat. The ears were also waving in the wind like a couple hours ago. Do you like to sleep? The same voice said unhappily. Did you forget in the forest? Lissa looked up. To her left stood her savior. His shoulders were often raised. A couple drops of sweat rolled down his cheeks. The wind played with the collar of his shirt, moving it in different directions. I'm lost, Lissa whispered, settling down on the grass. What happened? The guy crouched next to her, taking off his cap, hiding his neck of golden hair. He said I was on my way to change the tractor driver. I'm walking, and all of a sudden I see a man in the field, and Rick has already started the thresher. It was about to drag on. You saved me. You could say that, the guy replied. For a couple of seconds, the guy sat in silence. The girl hugged her knees and looked ahead, replaying what had happened in her head. Lissa remembered that the tractor driver knew her. He had said her name. She couldn't be mistaken. What you called me when you tried to run away. The guy looked at the girl seriously. His blue eyes raced over his stepdaughter's face, as if trying to catch an invisible cat. Lissa, where's Sam from? But no sooner had the girl spoken than some guy came running toward them. He stopped and knelt on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Are you crazy to get under the tires? The guy yelled angrily at Sam, then shifted his gaze to the model. They didn't. After a rough night. Did you push a guy in the knee? No. Well, how else do you explain it? There's nobody in the field but you and the tractor driver. Or is that a new intern? Did you come for an internship? The guy said with a sneer. Breathing out the words, he answered Lissa. She almost fell under the hammer. I happened to be next to her. With a glance at the girl, the savior introduced the guy who escaped. This is Rick. That is, Mademoiselle is not busy. With interest, specified Rick. And the fact that this Mademoiselle almost died. A couple of seconds ago, you do not care at all. Lissa shouted angrily. That's me being happy, Lissa. Nice to meet these words. Sergei extended his hand to the girl, accepting the handshake. Lissa, gradually coming away from the shock, stared at Sam. The guy was looking somewhere in the distance and didn't seem to be interested in the dialogue of words at all. I wanted to know if you should go home. Cut off the savior. Grandma must have gotten worried by now. He knows me for sure. Well, how? She couldn't figure it out. When she strained her memory, only the image of a tractor with huge metal teeth appeared in her mind. In that case, we'll postpone our dialogue until tomorrow. Mademoiselle leaned over and said to Rick, promise to come to our humble club on Saturday night. I don't think that's a good idea. And for Sam's sake. Winked the guy. Sam, hearing his name, shifted his gaze to his friend. His expression remained calm, but his eyes burned like blue flames. Eager to get home as soon as possible, Lissa replied, okay. Just give me some water, please, and show me the way to the village. With these words, the girl tried to get up, but staggered from the pain in her body. The boys were on either side of her, helping her up. Both of them worriedly looked at the girl. It won't go that way, concluded Sam. I'll get the tractor. With these words, the guy ran off in an unknown direction, leaving the girl alone. Rick tried to talk to Lissa, but got only one-syllable answers. After a couple of minutes, an engine noise was heard, and then a blue tractor appeared. Behind the wheel sat Sam, driving confidently, and all the while, looking under his feet, looked up. The girl froze, scrutinizing the driver. Clear movements smoothed back, imagining that right now James will drive next to him. Stepdaughter flooded with blush. Sam stopped the tractor, jumped off the cab. Get in. The driver gestured for Lissa and Rick to get in. The girl headed towards the cab and already wanted to get up, but she was stopped by a voice from the wrong place. You're going to the bucket. Turning around, Lissa saw grinning Sam. The guy was smiling, stroking his forehead. Well, to the bucket, so to the bucket, just get me out of here as soon as possible. Rick gave him a hand in turn, helping him into the car. Then he jumped in himself. Sam climbed inside the tractor, throwing the girl a bottle of water. The machine hummed. Lissa shuddered involuntarily. Then the girl felt a jolt. Another still tractor went, and with it the millionaire's daughter, who had spent the night in the woods. The girl squirmed, afraid of falling out of the rug. The tractor seemed to be flying smoothly rather than driving down the forest road. The girl gingerly peered over the edge of the iron and found that there was absolutely nothing to fear. After a few seconds, Lisa felt safe and enjoyed looking at the surrounding plants. It's not scary. Rick decided to clarify, putting his hand on the girl's shoulder. Lissa had already forgotten he existed and had risen forward. Did the girl manage to throw herself off the guy's arm? No, that's cool, she replied, trying to outshout the noise of the tractor. Okay, so you're the rich guy, dog? Rick suddenly asked. Interesting. The girl didn't know if she was Lisa or not. She didn't care anymore. She just wanted to take a shower and forget about this scary day. God, I'm so scared. Cindy couldn't stop stroking Lisa's face. Her stepdaughter's attempts to calm. The old woman had so far failed. It's all right. Grandma is fine now. Lisa kept repeating. Thanks to the tractor driver. Yes, I will give Sam the whole harvest this year. I ran risking myself. How much do I owe him? Jesus. Lisa squinted at her grandmother. Do you know who he is? How could I not? A friend of yours. Oh, how you two used to get into trouble together. Lissa had a stroke. No. Is that it? Yes, it was him, Sam's friend, the friend who taught her how to steal the neighbor's strawberries, who'd suddenly abandoned her 3 years ago, who'd made her cry for a week and forbidden herself to trust people. But how could she not recognize him? The guy hadn't changed much since the last time they'd see each other. I scared them, of course, she thought. He came back from school 3 years ago and went straight to work for his father. Now David is in charge of everything in the field. Continued to tell their grandmother about the case, decided that she would go to the dam club and find out everything. I hadn't thought of evening dresses, Lissa thought, trying on outfits. For the first time in a long time, she wanted to look irresistible. Oh, come on. I'm not going out in jeans. Lissa furiously threw her clothes on the bed, and there was a knock. Then Cindy opened the door. What are you yelling about? Lisa, the towel thieves are at it again, sarcastically said Grandma. Lissa laughed sadly and sat down on the spot where she had just thrown her clothes. I have nothing to wear, Grandma. I never thought I'd be hanging around country clubs. Cindy sighed, about to comfort her granddaughter, but stopped abruptly. What am I doing? The old woman ran out of the room. She must have forgotten to turn off the stove, Lissa thought. There was a series of loud noises. Shelves creaked, open cupboard doors fell off. A couple minutes later, Cindy returned with a hanger in her hand. She was wearing a white dress studded with small, dark green florets. Seeing such beauty, Lissa was taken aback by her grandmother. Is it yours? She asked, spellbound. Cindy laughed. No, granddaughter, it's Mom's. I have such a waist like never before. Try it on. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you. Lissa threw her arms around Cindy. The dress sat on Lisa like a stepdaughter, and she couldn't keep her eyes off the mirror, looking at herself from one side and the other. Even if it was only a modest white dress. But how native, how mommy's. Lissa applied light makeup. She put on sandals. The girl decided not to bother with her hair and let her long hair down. All the way her stepdaughter nervously wound a curl on her finger, imagining the most different outcomes of tonight. The music was already playing in the club and echoing in the street. Near the building were the village youth. Seeing Lisa, one guy from the village company whistled and headed in the direction of the girl to speed up. Lissa ran inside. The building was quite bright. A music ball was spinning. Children and young people filled the dance floor. Among them were couples nervously, already in the corners. Lissa, are you here? An unexpected voice distracted the girl from watching. And before she could even see her interlocutor, Lisa found herself in his arms. "Rick," the girl asked hesitantly, looking at the silhouette. The guy answered confidently. There was an awkward pause between the acquaintances, and then she wanted to leave. But Rick stopped the girl. "Let's go dancing." With these words, the guy grabbed Lisa by the hand and dragged her deep into the crowd. "How many times can you touch me?" The girl was indignant. "Only in your head." The guy quickly joined the crowd of dancers. Rick had a great combination of arm and leg movements. It looked beautiful and harmonious. But it didn't interest Lisa at all. Looking around, the girl could not find Sam anywhere. At some point, the stepdaughter became desperate. She decided to ask Rick directly if her savior Rick would come. Rick tried to shout Lisa to the guy, but the music drowning her out was hoarse. After a night in the woods, the voice now, putting her hands out in front of her, answered Rick. The guy started making his way through the crowd to somewhere toward the tables, and then she was left alone, trying to move. The girl felt a growing awkwardness with each passing second. It seemed to her that everyone was looking only at her and discussing how badly she was dancing. A couple seconds later, Rick returned with a glass in his hands. Inside was a bright orange liquid that resembled orange juice. The guy dancing put the glass into the girl's hand with gestures, showing her what it was. Lisa decided to clarify before tasting the drink of unknown origin. "My author's juice, drink from the music." The girl heard only the word juice, but I didn't ask for it. Rick started clapping his hands, forcing the girl to taste the contents. Lisa gave in and decided to take a sip. At first, the liquid unpleasantly burned her tongue and then her throat, feeling the high concentration of alcohol. The girl almost spit out the drink, but she, unlike the stove, conscience did not allow her to dirty the clothes of strangers. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed Lisa's wrists. She was dragged away from the crowd. "Am I a puppet?" Lisa shouted into the crowd, trying to break free. That only strengthened the grip, spilling a good portion of juice on the way. Then, with an unknown companion, they went out into the street. "Let me go, or I'll scream." "Nobody's holding you anymore. They just gave it to me now." She realized that the stranger's hand was no longer on her wrist. "So I'll take this." The guy who the voice belonged to carefully took the glass with the drink out of Lisa's hands. After a second, the orange contents went into the bushes. There was no lighting behind the club, and the girl could only orient herself to the voice, trying to make out the silhouette standing in front of her. Lisa decided to try her luck. "Sam, you're out of your mind." I invited her. From behind her came Rick's aggrieved voice. Lisa's eyes gradually adjusted to the darkness, and she could make out the figure of a guy walking toward them. "And you?" Again. "And you decided to spoil her stomach with your car." And finally, she was convinced that Sam was standing in front of her. "Yeah," decided to confirm the girl. "I burned my whole mouth with that drink." "What were you thinking?" Sam's question was directed to Lisa as she took the drink from unfamiliar hands. "Oh, I was thinking." Lisa smoked unhappily. "And the fact that he decided to save me doesn't bother you at all." "Screw both of you." Not wanting to participate in the dispute, swore Sergei. "Do what you want with your richness." With these words, Rick whistled and turned toward the club. Sam did not wait long either, but having recovered in the opposite direction. Not the outcome I was expecting, Lisa thought, so she and Sam did. The guy stepped to the side of the main road, which had lights on it. Lisa, flying behind him, could finally get a better look at him. Word was wearing his shirt again, but this time played. Lisa noted that the guy's hair appeared to be styled to the left. Well, his was waving. The girl thought, remembering that the friends had once been the same height. "How long are you going to follow me?" The words stopped so abruptly that the model, engrossed in his thoughts, flew face first into his back. Rubbing her nose, the girl replied, "As long as it takes, as long as I will. And actually, I wanted to talk to you. You didn't even recognize me." "I was just scared." Sam exhaled irritably and turned to the girl. Folding his arms, the guy prepared to listen to Lisa. From the outside, it looked like he didn't care what the girl was talking about. except that the growing anxiety gave out nervous shoe shaking. And then she exhaled, trying to calm down, and spoke. You and I have not seen each other. 3 years you left so abruptly without saying anything. I tried to find out where you were, even went to see your father. Where'd you disappear to after Lisa chose words? After our last night together, Words lowered his eyes. I wanted to fall under the ground. The boy remembered perfectly well the night Lisa had talked about. How many times he'd imagined that dialogue, thought about how they'd talk about everything. He'd ask her for forgiveness. And she, of course, will forgive the words, will earn her trust, not immediately, but will earn it. And now she's his loyal friend, his faithful companion in adventure, his first love, standing there across the room. And he finds it hard to find the words. Why don't you say something? Sam, Lisa. She touched the boy's shoulder lightly. What happened then? He's your father. Lisa saw how hard it was for Sam to talk. He paid for my tuition on the condition that I never go near you again. Lisa averted her eyes. A second ago praying and answer us now from the realization she had been betrayed again. How could you not be able to handle your emotions? Lisa pushed the guy in the chest. Lisa, that's not all. Sam continued without raising his head. I wouldn't trade our friendship, our feelings, for anything to go to school in the city. My father took the money. Lisa took a step back, dumbfounded by what she had heard. Was this really what had happened? But how much could she believe? Sam now. Trust anyone after a series of betrayals? Are you lying to me? Of course not, Lisa. Sam lifted his head and looked her straight in the eye. All I needed was for you to lie beside me on the grass, hiding under your jacket from the rain. To see your eyes, your smile. Then why didn't you run away? Why didn't you try to find me? If I had taken one step away from you, my father's business would have been ruined. Your father threatened us, saying that he would ruin the lives of both Dad and Pedya and me. Lisa noticed that Sam's voice was beginning to tremble. Dad was very afraid for me and my brother, especially after Mom died. I could see how worried he was. I couldn't go against him. And further confused, gazed into Sam's eyes. The girl couldn't believe that the only obstacle between her and happiness was her own father. Forgive me, Lisa often froze. Why? Why did you save me? Why did you risk your life? In response, the silence is so tense and painful. Unable to bear it, Lisa uttered Sam. The boy scrutinized Lisa's face, emerald eyes and blonde hair. Since childhood, Sam did not understand why nature decided to choose such an unusual combination for this girl's appearance. Because I love you. Calmly he said just a phrase, a set of letters, but with what a deep and sensual meaning. Now Lisa was silent. It turns out that it is not so easy to confess your feelings. Sam continued, because I fell asleep and woke up with thoughts of you. Because I was like a madman, rushing to the field when Christopher described the girl in the morning. Chased him all the way to the woods. A girl that looked like a toddler, dressed. Because I saw you sleeping there in the woods, just like when I was a kid. How many times do I have to cut my heart with Lisa's explanations? The girl was shocked. The bitterness of the moments they'd lost because of her father was crushing her throat. She wanted to tear down that invisible wall, burn out the thicket between them. Could she after all this time? Lisa rested her head against Sam's shoulder. The girl was confused by the smell of fresh grass and male deodorant. The guy was taken aback by the unexpected tenderness from the one he'd been dreaming of all these years. Let's get out of here, he pronounced, hastily wiping the protruded and tear. Do you remember how the goat chased us? When you decided to talk to her? In Cossack language, and in a few months the horned one was already chasing us. And not this day was when my friend Sam brought little Lisa a caterpillar. God, how you squealed then, trying to cover your ears. I dropped the poor caterpillar. And then for some reason I screamed myself, sitting in the summer. Kitchen at the table, two young people were having a fun conversation. They talked about the events of the past, never missing a detail. Do you remember when you gave me that radio control car for my birthday? My mom and dad thought I stole it. Not only did you steal it, but you rolled it in a puddle." Laughing, Lisa replied, "Speaking of puddles, remember how we got caught in a heavy downpour the day we last met? That's where the sex words came from." Lisa felt as if she had come back to reality. The girl looked bitterly at the guy as we sat in the shack all evening. "I remember I was flooding with tears as always, and you were comforting me, trying to warm me up. It was only a couple years ago, but I remember that day so well." Lowering my voice, Sam said, "I lied to you then," Lisa said and bit her lip. "What do you mean I lied? I'd never kissed anyone before." The girl shifted her elbows on the table. "It's just that I'm kind of urban. Had to know something, so I lied." The girl froze on the bench even after you left, raising her eyes to Sam. Lisa met his worried gaze. The girl felt a blush clinging to her cheeks. Her heart beat more frequently. Lisa couldn't understand why she felt so calm and so strange around him. Sam smiled and moved to the other side of the bench, where Lisa sat with slightly trembling fingers. The boy picked up a strand of his stepdaughter's hair and began to twirl the makeshift curl. Lisa's only thought up until that second had been to hide her cheeks. First to drown in that tenderness the girl's eyes, as if not under her control, lowered to Sam's lips. Lovers don't need words, the tiniest facial expressions, emotions, breathing. It was enough to realize how long they had longed for each other. Sam touched his lips first to Lisa's cheek, and then left a trail of small kisses on the girl's lips. After a couple moments, the gentle touches became assertive and passionate. Lisa drowned in the feelings, not believing that this was really happening. When hugs and kisses were not enough, Sam lightly picked the girl up in his arms and, continuing to shower her with kisses, carried her into the house. The next couple of weeks passed unnoticed. Lisa tried not to think about the fact that she would have to return to the city, endlessly walking, helping her grandmother in the vegetable garden and spending time with her beloved. The girl felt happy, and Dell was surrounded by love and care. She was finally needed by someone. One morning, Lisa was having breakfast as usual, trying to load her social media feed. The girl was getting sick at the mere mention of medieval romances, so she wanted to read something new, refreshing the page time after time. Lisa felt a strange taste in her mouth with every second. The unpleasant sensation was getting stronger. After a minute, the girl rushed to the bathroom, feeling that the sandwiches wouldn't be back for a while yet. Emptying her stomach, the girl washed her face. When she returned to the kitchen, she met her grandmother returning from the garden. "Grandma, you don't buy any more cheese from this aunt." "Good?" asked the girl. Cindy raised her eyebrows in surprise and looked at her granddaughter. "Cheese like cheese? What's the matter? Is it spoiled? I just threw up." The grandmother's eyes widened. She stared perplexedly at her granddaughter. And the girl, "I'm sorry to ask," the grandmother hesitated. "But when you and Slava began to communicate again for a month already as not understanding what was going on," Cindy answered Lisa. The grandmother looked at her granddaughter in expectation, aghast. The girl realized what the old lady meant. "I'm calling Sam," answered Lisa, without waiting for a new question, and ran for the phone. That same evening, Sam brought some pregnancy tests from the nearest town. No matter how much Lisa prayed, they were all positive. The girl was terrified when she found out she was pregnant. Lisa immediately told Sam about everything. Luckily, the guy was not embarrassed at all. "I'll accept whatever you decide. Lisa, we will raise this child together," he said, hugging the frightened girl. Grandma at first was skeptical of the news. Cindy was frightened not by the young age of the future mother, but by her own years. Grandma was afraid that she would not be able to help the girl with the care of the baby, that she would not have time to teach her everything, show her everything. But Lisa at the review was Sam's words assured. "They'll make it work." Lisa's dad decided to inform last but delayed the call for a very long time. The girl hadn't lived in the house in over a month, with little contact with her family. Sometimes Lisa wanted to text Kelly or Betty, but picked up the phone. So she sat with it, despite the contacts. Surrendered. Kelly was the first to text. First one, then a second, third message. The stepmother wondered where her stepdaughter had disappeared to, and when she would return to her studies, her domestic duties, her new violin brought from Italy. At first, Lisa answered one-wordedly and then stopped altogether. Whatever will be, the girl thought, deliberately ignoring her stepmother. Once, returning with the glory from the field, before the lovers opened an unusual picture, two Mercedes, positioned right in front of the grandmother's gate, and a pair of guards in black jackets, tailored to the stepmother's order. The father sternly asked the words tighter, squeezing the girl's hand. Yes, Lisa answered confusedly. Hopefully he is without Kelly, walking past the guards and also squeezing Sam's hand tightly. Lisa walked into the house. The hallway smelled of expensive cologne. Her father's jacket sat loosely on her shoulders as the only one on Cindy's daughter's coat rack. Finally, Charles' voice came from the living room. "Wait here, I'll be right there," whispered Lisa, smacking the boy on the nose. Nodding, the boy stayed waiting for the girl in the hallway. The atmosphere in the living room was, to say the least, tense. Granny sat in a chair. Cindy, stretched out on a string, did not descend Charles' glass. Lisa noticed how difficult it was for the old lady. Granny often organized, and her fingers trembled. But Cindy held on, and for her sake Lisa would do the same. For Granny's sake, for Sam's sake, for their future. Charles settled himself on the couch, resting one hand on the backrest. The man radiated confidence with his whole appearance. He walked with his shoes on, Lisa observed, sympathizing with his grandmother, sweeping the floors almost every morning. "And I'm right behind you." The father stood up, wanting to hug his daughter. Lisa did not budge. "And you?" "Hi, Daddy." Charles, clearly not expecting such a cold greeting. Trying to lighten the mood, the man spoke. Lisa's favorite Kelly figure was broken. "I Betty," the camera showed her dropping the shard right in front of your roux in the holes, didn't it? Lisa was silent. "And also James, Robert's son, said he forgives you, saying he was overreacting and scared you." "See, daughter, it's okay. It's not okay." "Daddy," Lisa thought. She wanted to say how much she cared about James' forgiveness, but kept silent. Realizing that words had no effect on the girl, Charles became nervous. "Come back. Lisa, you've had enough of your life in the woods." Cindy thundered while it lasted, hearing what her son-in-law called her village. "Meet Kelly and I miss you." "Daughter." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. She wanted so badly to throw herself on her father's neck, to drown in his arms, just like when she was a child. But the girl silently looked her father straight in the eyes. She wouldn't cry. She's strong, mature. She is loved not for playing the violin, not for being able to matchmake herself for the son of a business partner. She's loved for what she is. "I forgive you, Daddy," came the girl's quiet voice. "That's great." The father rejoiced. "Come on, let's hug." Opened his arms. Dad stared at Lisa in anticipation. Her heart was racing. Now or never? It was in her head. Taking in more air, Lisa said, "Dad, there's something I have to tell you." Of course, she nodded understandingly, expecting an apology in return. "Go ahead." "Lisa?" But there was no turning back. "Daddy, I'm pregnant." Hands open for a hug, arms down. "What do you mean, pregnant how?" "How long?" asked the father, clearly realizing exactly how it was happening. "What kind of question is that, Charles?" "It's been a month," answered the grandmother for the girl for a step from side to side. The man lowered his head thoughtfully. Next, she looked at the grandmother. She was still sitting with a perfectly long back, but you could see a small shiver run through the old woman. "But it's okay, that's what we'll fix." My father said it over and over again, like he was trying to believe his own words. Lisa, hearing this, instinctively took a step back. Her heart was beating so fast you could count the beats. "What do you mean, fix it?" "That's what it means, Lisa. Now, I'd like to ruin my life for something stupid." With those words, the man walked toward his daughter. I wondered where she was. "And you feel like a grown-up. Who's the brave one?" And the father stood in front of his daughter. "Answer me." "Aya," Sam slipped, his hand between Charles and the model. The girl took another step back, feeling her back against the wall. The father first lowered his gaze to the boy's hand and then moved his gaze to Sam's face. Realizing who stood before him, Charles became enraged. His nostrils dilated and his chest began to rise more and more. "You hissed man. I ordered you not to come a step closer to my daughter." Sam's face did not change, serious and stern voice, as then on the field. The boy calmly replied, "I love her. We will raise this child together." Charles blushed. It seemed that just a second more and the man on the street, like a balloon, would explode with his anger. Adjusting the collar of his shirt, Charles spoke quickly. "Ah, we'll grow up." "You're welcome." He turned toward the model. "Well, grow up only on my help. Alyosha don't expect to walk. I got it, and we'll grow up. So that with a belly in my house you will not be." With these words, the man went to the hallway and dropped the hanger, loudly slammed the door. And yet, she fell to her knees. Sam, at the same second, was next to her, hugging the girl. "It's over. This is the end." Over and over, the thoughts ran through the stepdaughter's head. Somewhere inside, the girl knew it would be like this. But hope, as they say, is the last to die. It was for the best. And the girl concluded the grandmother came to her granddaughter. Cindy stroked the girl's head. Sam dabbed his lips on her shoulder, gathering tears with his finger. "It's for the best," Lissa repeated. She exhaled. Charles, as always, was drinking his morning coffee. Kelly, sitting across from him, was watching television. The woman changed channel after channel, which only annoyed her husband. The doorbell rang. "It's the manicurist. I'll get it read out." Kelly ran to the door. "Turn off the TV." But the woman at the flying well was unstoppable. Charles pushed irritably, reached for the remote. The television was showing the news. A reporter was talking about the terrible fires that had swept through the farmland. Hundreds of fields have been burned by the drought. "What a waste," the man concluded. Charles was about to turn off the television, but suddenly stopped. The cup fell out of his hands. One of the victims of the fire, among those caught on camera, was Lisa. His Lisa, a frail, fire-mutilated body, a headscarf developing in the wind, a white dress, an arm without the vital link between structure and oxen. From every attempt by the doctors to resuscitate the girl, the man jumped up, but the sudden movement made his eyes darken. Trying to leave the room, Charles managed a good half of the papers from the desk. Kelly, seeing the master off, caught this picture. The stepmother was instantly at her husband's side. Charles, what's wrong with you?" "Hurry to Chernigovka." The long Mercedes drove at breakneck speed. The car was difficult to fit among the hundreds of lines of morning traffic jams, but the experienced driver somehow managed to move faster. Charles' condition was like a delirium. His forehead was sweating. His hands were shaking. Kelly didn't understand what was going on, but from her husband's words, she understood the main point. Her stepdaughter might be dead. "Hurry," Lissa repeated, all the way to the house. A frightened Kelly held her husband's head in her lap, wiping away the dripping sweat with her sleeve. A couple of hours later, they were in the village of Chernigovka, where there was an unpleasant smell of burning. Charles gave the order to drive to the big house itself, with its roof and huge garden. Fortunately, it was practically at the entrance to the village. The businessman hoped the look of the house remained the same since his last visit, when he threatened the businessman, who had just gotten over the loss of his wife, that he would buy all of his lots. When the Mercedes stopped, the man asked Kelly to track down the owner of the house. Charles found it difficult to move, as his legs were numb with fear for his daughter. The frightened woman ran to the gate. Fortunately, the gate was open. There was a dog barking, squealing. Kelly ran to the door. Christopher was mastering something in the hallway, dejectedly reaching for the handle. So once more dejectedly reached for the knob when he heard a knock. Sam probably can't open the door. Potatoes, the boy thought, when he saw a beautiful woman on the doorstep. The boy was frightened and carried everything after his father. Where is the model? Where is the owner of this house?" shouted Kelly, feeling that her eyes were covered with tears. A second later, a tall, clean-cut man with a long beard appeared on the doorstep and hurried over to the woman, sending Christopher to fetch water. David listened to Kelly, but could not make out a single word. Lisa. Lisa repeated the stepmother. There are fires. He also saw on TV a girl on a stretcher in a white dress. What? What are you talking about? Vainly tried to understand the man. The door shrieked and fell open. Cheerful voices were heard. Sam entered first, holding a whole sack in his hands. Lisa appeared next. Blonde hair. Girls were braided, white dress studded with small flowers, gathered at stomach level. Seeing Kelly sobbing, she shrieked and ran up to her stepmother. That already prepared for the most terrible began to sob even more. When she saw the hotel, she saw alive. Another creak was heard. Charles still struggled to move his legs with the help of the driver. Barely made it to the door. Everyone stared at poor Daddy. Daddy. When the man heard Lisa, he fell to his knees. His legs gave out completely. Daddy, Daddy, get up. Lisa ran up to the man, trying to lift him up. And the girl read he hugged his daughter. Forgive me, blood. Forgive the fool. Tears, tears, tears of joy and happiness flowed from Charles' eyes, but at the same time tears of shame. It had been 3 months since he had given up Lisa. At first, the man was angry with the girl. How dare she disrupt all my plans? When you come back, I'll give you a good time. I think he was sure of his daughter's imminent return. But Lisa didn't return after a week or a month. Soon, anger was replaced with regret and then longing. He missed her calls of laughter so much. Her beautiful smile, her sloppiness. He missed all of her, whatever she was. A couple times the image of the little girl's daughter appeared to him in his dreams. A couple of times they had held young Lisa's hands together and walked leisurely with unhurried steps into the distance. Lisa, of course, forgave her father. Her pure heart, inherited from her mother, did not know how to hold a grudge. As an apology for old disagreements, the man invested in David's farming business, which the men decided to develop together. A month later, the construction of the family nest Sam and Lisa began, and 6 months later, the wedding right before the birth of the baby girl. Charles helped the children in the construction, but Sam earned a living on his own. The guy made the decision to provide for his wife and everything. Lisa needed one caring shoulder to lean on. The grandmother, who could not find peace after the death of her daughter, finally breathed a sigh of peace. She had done her duty, raising her granddaughter and marrying her off. Lisa, whose life had become like a tangle, had become a long and continuous thread, and it was impossible to break it from now on.